I want to start with a thank you to our first responders and essential workers during this pandemic. I have deep compassion for all that you are facing each day. The internal struggles that likely arise when you wake up in the morning and get ready for work, and the many painful struggles that you are experiencing at work and then afterwards at home. This ever-present fear of the unknown, the exhaustion of being constantly on high alert, trying to take in and make sense of what you are witnessing and hearing every day, the loss of the familiar and comforting, and the weight of trying to hold it all together. Those of you on the front lines, our first responders and essential workers, are at particular risk for developing what is called vicarious traumatization, also known as secondary trauma. Anyone who is connected to and serves those who have experienced trauma is at risk for developing secondary trauma symptoms. When there is a worldwide crisis, we all experience psychological distress, yet you, as an essential worker, are at higher risk for distress and trouble functioning, and you deserve extra care and compassion. I'm going to take the next few minutes to tell you about the signs of secondary trauma and ways to address those symptoms during these disorienting times. Here are some of the symptoms of secondary trauma. People with secondary trauma sometimes experience a sense of detachment or numbness, an inability to experience pain and pleasure. However, increased sensitivity, excessive irritability, and difficulty controlling anger can also be a sign as well. Feelings of guilt and shame and sadness are also common. A sense of disconnection from those you love and withdrawing from them can be a sign. Sleep disruption, that's often a sign or symptom of secondary trauma. So difficulty falling or staying asleep, waking up extra early and not being able to fall back asleep, and of course, nightmares. And often people with secondary trauma have repetitive nightmares with themes of feeling helpless, out of control, or in danger. A sense of always being on alert, monitoring for danger. This is an experience, a feeling you have when you have secondary trauma, being unable to relax, easily startling, muscle and joint pain, because you're always on alert, so your muscles are always tense, you're ready for danger, you're always experiencing the sense of fight or flight, feelings of panic. When highly anxious, feeling as if you or the world around you is not real. And this often is extremely stressful for those who have secondary trauma, to have this sense of what's called dissociation or derealization, a sense of unrealness. Disruptions in memory, such as memory loss or fragmented memories, or intrusive memories that you often try to suppress. That's common with people with secondary trauma. They are just walking along, doing their normal responsibilities, and they have an intrusive memory. You're away from work, you're home with your children, and you have an intrusive memory from work. And you try to suppress that memory. Unfortunately, the act of trying to suppress it often leads to it being more likely to come back. So intrusive memories are common when you have secondary trauma. Something that is can occur when you have secondary trauma is having a flashback. And a flashback is re-experiencing a traumatic memory as if the original event is happening right in the present moment. And that can be very distressing. Clearly, difficulty concentrating is a symptom and sign of secondary trauma. Acts of avoidance, commonly avoiding your feelings, or compensation beyond what is recommended and normative. For example, what do I mean by that? Washing your hands for 2 minutes, so overcompensating rather than for the recommended 20 seconds. Another sign, a very important one of secondary trauma, is thinking about the world and yourself in ways that are not typical for you. So you're not a cynical person, but all of a sudden you are extremely cynical. Or you tend to be an optimistic person, but now you're finding yourself feeling very hopeless. When someone is experiencing secondary trauma, their beliefs about themselves and others are often shaken. So I'm a caring person. Why am I furious all the time? I'm a friendly person. Why have I stopped saying hello to the neighbors? Even though I'm social distancing, I don't even wave. I used to feel life was predictable. Now I feel as if anything can happen at any time, that life is just random. I don't have confidence in my own judgment and decision making. I don't have confidence in the decision of others, those in authority or the government or our church leaders or whoever it may be. And these beliefs are different than how you typically believe or operate. So what can you do if you're experiencing some of these symptoms or signs of secondary trauma? Well, first of all, try to treat yourself as you would treat a dear friend who is experiencing what you are experiencing. Be compassionate to yourself as you would be compassionate towards a friend. Acknowledge and be mindful of what you're experiencing right now. So acknowledgement and mindful acceptance. Acknowledge the hardships of your situation. For example, my work means I need to be close to people who have or could have COVID-19, and my brain is telling me stay away. This is very difficult to have this kind of conflict. I can be called into work at any time. Your normal rhythms are disrupted. So acknowledgement of some of the hardships of your own situation. Identify, acknowledge, and be willing to accept your feelings rather than condemn your feelings or suppress them. Try to observe your feelings, including any shame you might have about your feelings. Notice and accept the presence of your feelings. Everyone will experience psychological distress under these circumstances, under these times. They are not a sign of weakness. So if you have a belief about your feelings that they represent weakness, just notice that belief, but try not to buy into it. Acknowledge the thoughts and the images that pop into your mind. Accept that they're there for the time being. They're thoughts and images, not facts. And one thought often follows another thought. We have thoughts, they come and they go. Try to recognize the difference between a thought you might have about a situation and actual facts. Try to be kind to yourself and let go of unrealistic expectations for yourself as a worker, as a professional, if you're a professional, as a family member, as a friend. Importantly, allow yourself to make mistakes. We all do every day. So be kind to yourself about the mistakes that you are going to make. Connection is extremely important to help you when you have secondary trauma. Connection to others. Talk to your coworkers. See that you're not alone. They're also going through much of what you're going through right now, not in the exact same way, but there are similarities. And when you recognize those similarities, when you see that you are not alone, you begin to feel better. You begin to feel not as vulnerable. Reach out to others for support. As I say to my clients, try not to burrow in your own brain. It's very easy to end up ruminating about your fears and just being in this cycle of just thinking about one fear after another. Instead, try to reach out to others for support. And connect through humor. It's one of our superpowers. Or inspiration. Send a coworker, a family member, a friend, a cartoon, or an inspirational quote or a video. These are ways to connect. They give us a little bit of healthy emotional connection and distance. Let's talk a little bit now about balance and boundaries. Very important during this time to take care of both your physical body and your mind. Make sure that you drink enough water and eat 3 meals. It's so easy to forget these things, to go through the day and end up being dehydrated, which only stresses your system, makes you more vulnerable to feeling emotional stress as well. Try to take walks or climb up and down stairs if it's a rainy day. Play with your children outside if you can. That's a great stress reliever. Or dance in your home for exercise. Take a deep breath. This is something so small but so important. And one way to take a deep breath is to put your hands behind you like this and just breathe. And it can give you a moment of relaxation, a moment where you can just reassess. Relax with a warm beverage. Massage your neck and your feet, or even better, have someone massage your neck and feet for you. Engage in a hobby. Learn something new. Something really important is to get yourself out into nature. Notice the beauty of nature. Pay attention to just the leaves in the trees and how the wind is moving through them, or not through the leaves, but pushing the leaves back and forth. Notice the sky. Be in nature. That can be very calming. Pray, meditate. Make sure you take breaks during your workday, even if they're short. They're very important, and deliberately notice that you're taking a break and that you're taking care of yourself. Make a list of what you value most, and every day try to live in accord with those values, your primary values. Acknowledge if there's a conflict between your values. Recognize that. Recognize your questions and your current confusion, and recognize that you cannot have all the answers. A lot of times we'll spend a great deal of time searching the news to figure out, answers to our questions, but often that just leads to more questions. So recognize that we're limited creatures and that we're not going to receive the calm that we want through just perusing the news all the time. Recognize the positive steps that you've already taken and take each day. Just get yourself to work that day. Recognize that. That's huge. Don't downplay the steps you're taking. They're real and they're meaningful. And give yourself time to be alone and to reflect on all that's happening in our world right now. We are here for you at Avenues of Counseling and Mediation. We can help you to care for yourself or a loved one who is experiencing signs of secondary trauma during this very difficult time. We can provide you with support through teletherapy. Some insurance companies are even waiving copays and coinsurance at this time so that paying for therapy is not a barrier for you. So just remember, you don't have to do this alone. We are here for you if you need us. Okay, thank you so much.